out his career at the American Spectator as an errand boy for Bob Tyrrell, who is also something of a famous, I guess the most politic way to call him is a bon vivant.
Mm-hmm. I transported his stool samples.
Ask him about
And that's not a joke, sadly.
Later.
That's how everybody starts their career.
Which maybe was a good preparation for going then to Prevention magazine, where he wrote about
stool samples.
Mammograms,
I wrote
stool samples.
I wrote about stool samples, and I'm not lying.
That's horrifying.
Yeah, it's true.
Then he was at men's magazines like Men's Health, also Stuff and Maxim. During that time, he also wrote for women's magazines like Cosmo and Glamour and Mademoiselle. He was an early contributor to the what is now one of the biggest blogs on the internet, Huffington Post, which is a sort of liberal
Another stool sample.
Group blog. And now he's at Red Eye. I was actually going to tie all those jobs together with boobs,
yes,
which is another kind of common theme in there. So,
boobs and poop.
Boobs and poop. He was also rejected for a job at Reason in 1988. We're very sorry about that.
Yeah, I'll see you guys later.
But
it's really nice to see you. You had to bring that up.
So he, I'd say, is also one of the more prominent libertarian or conservative libertarians on television. The fact that he does a late-night libertarian show on Fox is an interesting slice of where television might be going right now. So maybe, although I've just given your resume, you could start with just a little description of your the evolution of your political beliefs.
Well, I guess first off, I think, as a teenager, I'll start there because I was a liberal. That's the only time I was ever a liberal because it helped me in school. Where I went to school, that if you collected signatures for the nuclear freeze, you got extra credit. And so that's how I became a liberal. And I realized the more you seemed to care about something, the more the teachers cared about you. And the people that, and your friends, if you shared the assumptions, the liberal assumptions, you don't have to think too much about it. And I thought that was great because it really helped me with grades. But after a few debates in school where I actually had to think about things, I realized I was a complete fraud. And kind of started to re-examine myself in college when I went to Berkeley. And yeah. It was a really bad idea. It was just walking around with a target on your back. But it was interesting because I became a conservative by being around liberals, and I became a libertarian by being around conservatives. And you realize that there's something distinctly in common between the two groups, the left and the right, is that the worst part of each of them is the moralizing. And on the left, you have people who want to dictate your behavior under the guise of tolerance, that you have to tolerate everything, therefore, except unless you disagree with me, then the tolerance goes out the window, which kind of negates the whole idea of tolerance. You're supposed to tolerate people who are not like you, but unless you're a left-winger. So I learned that was the politically correct moralizing, and then when you become a conservative, the other kind of moralizing comes from religion. But if you remove both of those from the equation, what you're left with is libertarianism, which is from the right, you've got free markets, and from the left, you have free minds. And that's really kind of like, to me, the only sensible direction you could be. And you just kind of over time, as you grow older, you kind of end up there, especially if you drink and do a lot of drugs. So.
Speaking of which, let's talk about your editorship of Stuff magazine, which when you took it over was kind of a beer and babes and boobs type magazine.
I can't believe you're skipping Men's Health.
I'm skipping Men's Health.
Really?
Yeah.
I was the only editor of any health magazine that did a feature on how smoking is good for you.
Okay, go ahead and tell us about that. That's going to be a winner.
How could you miss that story? And one of my primary interviewees was Jacob from Reason, and he turned me on to all these tobacco companies that were actually doing amazing research in Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, but nobody in the media would cover it because smoking is bad. And then I started looking at all this past. I would get all these amazing medical journals at Men's Health, and I loved them mainly for the weird pictures that I would copy and send out to my friends. I believe I was the original internet. Because I couldn't send an email. I would mail this stuff out, enlarged arms and weird faces. But I read a lot of this passive smoking stuff, and I realized it was just bullshit. This is not right. What they're trying to do is create science to legislate. And so I wanted to write about this, and I think I just become editor of Men's Health. You're supposed to, when you get a job like that, you're supposed to do the right thing, and I did the wrong thing. I wanted to do, it was called I Edit Men's Health and I Smoke. And we recreated a Parliament ad with me in the middle smoking, and it was really cool and wonderful. I interviewed every satanic person in the tobacco industry and cited their science, and it was a fantastic article, and it dropped like a stone in journalism. It was like people just hated it, but I said I couldn't help it because this is real health journalism, and people are going to find out once they stop demonizing substances. They're going to find out that these things can actually help people, and they're finding that out anyway. I mean, health editors are generally very miserable people. They constantly think there's something wrong with themselves. Meanwhile, they hate pharmaceutical companies. And here are pharmaceutical companies that have to bend over backwards to tell you what's wrong with their product. Those commercials, 90% of the commercials are them telling you not to buy it. And meanwhile, health editors are lying to you, telling you that new age practices, meditation, and crap that in other countries their leaders fly away from to here to get their transplants because the meditation and the yoga doesn't work. So you have these people that are making fun of drug companies who are liars, and the drug companies that can't afford to lie. So what I was learning is that I realized that the pharmaceutical company to me was bigger than the space program. They spend billions of dollars on tiny little things that change your life, and no one gives them credit for it. That's why I wanted to talk about Men's Health, because that's kind of where I started to get very, very pro-business. Like, you know what? Corporations are not these evil monoliths that they depict in Michael Clayton. They're just groups of people who work really hard to create good things that make our lives better, and they're treated like crap by editors who are paranoid weirdos.
Man, it was...
Sorry.
It was a chicken at lunch with red meat for the crowd here.
Yeah.
Well, and actually, when I was on your show, we talked about some findings about marijuana being, life extension, maybe staving off Alzheimer's. There's, not only pharmaceutical companies, but also. Yeah,
again, it's the idea, and I won't just say marijuana. I'll say ecstasy, acid, cocaine. These people take these things as a source to get out of their lives and for the sake of oblivion, but they also work. If you treat them like any other substance, you can, and legally, if you treat them, you can actually derive what makes them work and turn them into things that help you. And pot helps people who are in pain. And ecstasy, I mean, there's studies that show that it helps heal problem marriages. And this is back when it was legal, back in the 70s. They said that one treatment of ecstasy did more than like months of marriage therapy. And anybody who's done X knows that's a fact. By the way, I'm not on it right now. But if anybody is holding, I'll be out there waiting for...
You can talk to Greg about that after. So at Stuff, you were, in your own words, you turned this sort of dumb dude magazine into the most hedonistic, moralistic, hippie-hating magazine on the planet. It was relentlessly pro-America, pro-business, and anti-elitist East Coast bullshit.
Yeah, well, what I did was I'd been in publishing for about 10 years, and I got all the magazines, and all these magazines are done by editors who talk to other editors, mainly Esquire, Details, GQs. They're actually not read by anybody. Most of these magazines are bought up by agencies and dumped in order to raise their ABC so they can charge higher ad rates. But people don't read these magazines. However, guys read Maxim and they read Stuff because in there are things that actually relate to their lives. If anything, these magazines predated the search engines that the things people search for. So what I did when I looked at Stuff, I thought, well, it should always be about the unspeakable truth, the things that you know are right in your gut that everybody else says is wrong. And in magazines like Esquire, the truths in there are made to appeal to other editors, to make them feel good when they're at lunch. So they'll do a story shitting on the military because they know that that'll make the other editor feel good. Meanwhile, at Stuff, we decided we're going to do a survey of the military, and it's I think the only magazine at the time that ever went out. It was totally illegal. I just sent people out to installations and asked them questions about life, and it was an amazing thing. I also did that with death row inmates, which was equally as interesting and somewhat more disturbing because they sent pictures. Death row inmates love to draw and they love to write poetry.
What was